like we have on the west side of town with the Freedom Rock.
Sure.
At the entrance of the Fort Dodge Golf and Country Club.
Mm-hmm.
The Freedom Rock is there, and I know that was a highlight for a lot of people on RAGBRAI also.
Mm-hmm.
As they came through. They like to see those Freedom Rocks that have been done in all the counties in Iowa.
That's great, isn't it?
And then, of course, we have the silos, which, being a farmer, knowing the history of grain silos, when grain silos were built near railroads and rivers. And that's what we had with the silo on the west side of Fort Dodge down by Amigos. And that artwork that portrays. So,
that's great down there, that old silo.
Yeah, it is. And, to read that story, and my wife and I, we walk down around that area sometime. And, it's kind of interesting to see the historical aspects of that and what those things meant to the community and the businesses that are still here that are depicted on some of those, not just the paintings on the silo, but the history aspect of what Fort Dodge, like other communities, has to offer.
Yeah, that's over in Dubuque. Dubuque is a unique town, but they have some of the murals on their downtown older buildings as well. And I loved it. It says something about that community, as Floyd does about ours, as the mural on that beautiful mural on the old Cargill elevator down by the river. And you're right, the Heritage Rock, and it's wow. It's just really nice things. And I'm glad people are involved in getting this work done.
Well, and hopefully we can continue to embrace those diversity. I know the community has got some really wonderful leaders who start thinking about the vision for long term. I don't so much get into what's going on with regards to the updates with our cable services and what's going on there. Hopefully we have leaders that have good vision of that, and our community will not only embrace it, but will obviously, pay for it.
Oh yeah. Terry Menke talked about broadband, getting our own broadband. David Feerick the day before. And it looks like it's going to happen in early 23. Of course, the big companies are still fighting it all the way. And it's, I wish we'd have never let those people into town, really.
Well, but weren't you way back when you were on that board at one time, weren't
25 years ago, I was on the Cable Commission.
There you go.
And I got,
but we
got to hold hearings
where
angry people came before the commission and vented. And we got, even then, we didn't have MediaCom for cable then. We had Heritage or something like that. I don't know. Can't remember. But I got zero cooperation from the cable company ever. I mean, I'd call out there and try to talk to someone, and the people would only give me their first name, and they wouldn't tell me what their position was in the company.
Well, and technologies change, and they change quickly too. And the fast speed that we have of business this day and age, and we have to be able to adapt to that. And that's the way we also deal with that in agriculture. Another issue I just mentioned briefly about the renewable fuel standard. People talk about the price of gasoline, and we as farmers are happy to grow more corn, as I always speak about, for food, fuel, and fiber. And the fuel component of that is not just growing bushels of corn for the ethanol production itself, but the byproducts, or what we call the co-products from the ethanol plants, is livestock feed.
Sure.
And that is not always a cheaper source of feed, but it's a high quality nutrition aspect that we are buying. And so that's an important part, as you have a lot of science into the feed diets of the cattle and the hogs and the chickens and the egg laying birds. So, that's an important part. But the renewable fuel standard, it's been a political football for, probably the last 4 or 5 presidents that we have dealt with this problem. And in agriculture, we know that all the lobbying that we do as far as ag organizations or the groups involved with renewable fuels, the petroleum industry has 10 times more lobbying money than what we do. So if we have 50 million, for example, they have 500 million to combat whatever we might want to do. And so that's why some of these things, they go to the courts, and it's very costly for us in agriculture. But I would remind your listeners, and right in this part of Iowa, we're verging on a little bit of scary, if not a serious drought coming on. And the markets are not quite reflecting too much of that right now.
It's punishing out there.
Yeah, it really is. And those of us that have sprayed crops, and I finished spraying the last of my corn on Sunday morning, actually, because we're trying to spray our crops for crop protection products or crop, what I call preservation, yield preservation. You get out there in those fields and we see a lot of concern. And so it might look decent from the road, but you get out in there and we were very deficient on rain in a lot of areas.
Oh yeah.
But
and the heat's just been punishing.
Yeah, and what that makes a difference for is we won't be harvesting as many bushels as we thought we would, and so we may have some pricing differences. But we do have enough corn to supply the livestock industry. We do have enough corn to supply the ethanol industry. But what is most important is that we want to have corn to supply the export markets, because that's where we get more value or dollars coming back.
Maybe I'm showing my ignorance here, but you and I have been to California's Central Valley.
Yes.
It's a beautiful drive to go through that valley. It really is. And the crop out there is mainly onions, tomatoes, and lettuce. And there's acres and acres and acres of them. Well, they don't get the rain we do. So they've set up a rather elaborate irrigation system, and it's worked very well there. Do we need to think about that as something like an irrigation system or not?
Well, that's a really good question, because there have been more new technologies coming on. And if you go to a farm show in Nebraska, for example, one of their largest vendors would be the irrigation companies, because the aquifers, what we talk about, the Ogallala water aquifer, provides a lot of water. And of course, there's concern about the water table, the water level in those aquifers.
Of course.
So, but to answer your question, in Iowa, generally, we have enough rain in Iowa to grow the crop that we need to. We need to have 6 to 8 inches of water in the soil profile before we start the season. And this year we're a little deficient of that. And then if we get another 10.
Start the season, you mean the planting or harvest season?
Before the planting season.
Okay.
Yes. So if you have plentiful spring rains, your tiles are running, you have 6 to 10 inches of water in the soil profile.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on your soils, depending on the tile line levels, etc. But then you need to have another 10 to 16 inches of rain during the growing season.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're short right now. We're short in most parts of Webster County. We're short probably 4 to 7 inches of rain for the growing season. And that just means right now, the end of July, we have large cracks in the ground, and the crop is what we call firing. So the bottom parts of the crop leaves, they start dying off because the plant's trying to keep the stalk alive and provide moisture nutrients to the ear. And once that plant starts to shut down, and that's happening right now, and it may happen in the next week or so if we don't get 1 to 2 inches of rain.
Well, it's not in the forecast either. That's disturbing.
I know it's not in the forecast.
Not even in the forecast,
Yeah.
A lot of heat yet. I mean, it's going to cool off dramatically by the end of this week, or I should say the weekend. It'll be in lower heat.
Next week. Much better.
But that's good news, I guess, but it doesn't mean rain or moisture or anything. Did we have enough snow over the winter? I mean, we had a brutal February.
Yeah.
I mean, weather-wise, it was very uncomfortable.
Well, I think most people like me, especially going out to the farm every day with livestock, we don't really care about getting too much snow.
Yeah.
Because you have to deal with the other burdens of that.
I understand.
But I think if we had 20, 22 inches of snow, whatever we may have had, and whatever we got for the snow melt, that goes, hopefully goes in the soil profile. And this year, I think it did go in the soil profile, because if you had 20 inches of snow and you had a couple warm days and it ran off because the ground was frozen, then you wouldn't get the benefit of that. But just, as a reminder, it takes 12 inches of snow to equal 1 inch of rain.
1 inch of rain, right.
Yeah. So that's why the deficient or the shortfall of rain that we had in March and April just did not fill up our soil profile in this part of the state. Maybe Northeast Iowa, Southeast Iowa, they did have more rainfall in a lot of those areas.
I don't know. I don't know. I've been paying attention to those fires out west. We're kind of getting off the topic a little bit, but one of the reasons for the drought out there is they didn't have enough snow up in the mountains.
Yes.
And if that runoff from the from the mountains doesn't happen, they're in big trouble out west.
Yeah.
They have drought and they have out of control fires and all kinds of things.
Well, and I know on the farm show with Dwayne Murley today on KWMT.
You were over there?
No, I wasn't over there, but I listened to him, and he had Dr. Elwyn Taylor.
Sure.
And Elwyn has been a long time agriculture source of information on weather. And it's just not about what's happening this week or next week, but it's the predictions of long term. And Elwyn was saying, 3, 4, 5 years ago that we were in a period prior to that of not so much erratic weather patterns. And now we're going into the 25-year period of more erratic weather. And we're obviously seeing that. And obviously, as farmers, we talk about the weather because it has an impact on so many things that we make our decisions on. Maybe that's fertilizer prices. Maybe that's the type of seed we put in or the crop rotation that we put in. And so those are important factors. But we're already seeing pictures right now of west central Minnesota that the corn is only about 7 feet tall. It's not going to produce an ear. And they're chopping the corn for corn silage already.
Really?
Yeah. Now that corn silage will be used for some livestock feed.
Yeah.
But there's other problems with that. You just can't go feed as much of that as you want to. There's certain nitrates and other enzymes in the crop that would not be good for cattle, for example, at the wrong amount. But there'll be a lot of cropland area that will be standing, but may not produce very much yield this year.
West central Minnesota.
Yes. And of course,
they have a lot of cattle up there, do you know, or not?
I don't know what numbers it might be, but obviously, if you have crops that's under a drought situation like South Dakota, North Dakota have been now. Yeah. A couple weeks ago, they got some really nice rains, and we kind of got some tail end of that when we had maybe a couple inches of rain in the Fort Dodge town, but out east towards Webster City and down towards Radcliffe, Hardin County, that they've been missing more rains in that area. And it shows. All you got to do is tell by looking at people's yards in the countryside, when yards that are brown and haven't mowed for a couple, 3 weeks. Around some of my hog barns, I haven't mowed for almost 3 weeks now.
Really?
It's they're dead brown and it's dry. So anyway, we're doing the best we can and remain optimistic. And we talk about not only what we're trying to provide for food and fuel and fiber here, but as I indicate, what the world market and how important that is to us and bringing more dollars back to the United States with our exports.
Just keep those pork chops in the meat case there, Greg. That's all we ask.
We won't have a supply chain problem there. We know that.
No, we don't. No, we won't.
But,
this has been a particularly interesting hour with Greg Hora. It's always interesting with Greg, and I could sit over here and take a nap in this chair because Greg just carries the whole show. But I guess there's so many things that are happening in agriculture, and I wonder if climate change. Does Dr. Elwyn Taylor ever mention climate change? Because it's all over the television all the time.
Well, we're always changing, and so yes, that is change is inevitable, and the weather does change that way. But anyway, hey, just one last thing before I get off the time with you is you should probably try to get somebody from the police department, maybe Roger Porter, in here sometime, talk about the National Night Out, which is next week.
I certainly will.
Webster County pork producers, we will be grilling there, donating pork burgers to the firemen and the police and the sheriff's departments and the first responders. So looking forward to participating in that community event next week.
So you're not going to be down the state fair at all this year?
At this time, I'm not planning to because of scheduling.
Well, maybe I'll go down and just volunteer at the pork tent.
There you go.
Murley does that.
I'll have the pork queen meet you down there.
Yes, that's another thing. And I think Murley goes every year, doesn't he? At least one day.
Yes, he does.
I thought he did. Yeah.
We'll have to talk about that timing.
All right. We'll talk about that. 4:00 right now. Thank you, Greg. Thank you for your astute observations on an important industry in our area, of course. It's 94 degrees right now. Senator Kreinbrink and Representative Ann Meyer are next. And you're listening to AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.